Hello everybody, my name is Tanya and this is my wrap up for the BookBuddyAthon. So the BookBuddyAthon ran from the 7th to the 13th of May and is organised by Eleanor from Eleanor Reads Books and Sam from Cold and Crumbs, and my buddy was Gabby, and I had mixed success. I knew going in that I had quite a busy weekend for the start of the readathon. I chose some fairly achievable books, didn't quite get there, but it's all good. So I was able to finish 3 of my books during BookBuddyAthon and made a start on a 4th. Like I said, not quite as much reading done as I would have liked, but that's life. So the first book I completed was quite a few days into the readathon, I think. I've been making some progress on some stuff, but I hadn't actually finished anything. But I finally sat down and read this one, and that is The Alien by K.A. Applegate. This is the 8th book in the Animal series, and I read this one for the challenge of reading a book just because I wanted to. And as I said before, you know why I'm reading this. This was fantastic. Probably not much I can say about it. Again, it's a series, it's, you know, limited appeal, I guess, but I definitely have to reiterate that if you read these as a child, I am just loving this reread. The nostalgia is fantastic. I think they're really living up to, you know, time, and rereading them again now, I'm just loving it. This one is the first that's told from the perspective of Axe, who is the Enderlite who has joined the Animorphs. And the underlying theme of this one is very much what Axe feels he can and can't tell the Animorphs about the Enderlites and about the Yeerks and about their whole society. As always, just wonderful. I loved it. This is obviously why I'm participating in so many readathons. I just need to read all the Animorphs books. It all makes sense. Then the second book I completed was something that I've been working on, I think, pretty much from the start of the readathon. It's a short story collection, so I was reading things in and amongst other things, and that is 6 Bedrooms by Tegan Bennett Daylight. This is one that I'm reading for a project which I have now filmed a video about, which will be up soon, but probably not before this one. So stay tuned, that's coming soon, the explanation of why I picked this book. This one I wrote for the challenge of a book that your buddy picks out for you. I sent 3 books from this particular challenge that I'm doing to Gabby, and she picked this one. I enjoyed this, but I didn't love it. This is a short story collection that's all about themes of growing up and becoming an adult, and it's dealing with themes of sexuality and you know, first experiences with death and illness, because it's kind of skating that growing up and moving from adolescence into adulthood. It's kind of very much skating the line of, it feels quite a lot like YA, which is, you know, fine, and I do enjoy YA when I'm in the mood for it, but I wasn't exactly expecting that coming into this, although, you know, as I said, given the subject of this, maybe I should have. So it's written in a style that I think could work for both young adults and adults. Some of the content maybe is, you know, I understand why it's marketed as an adult book as opposed to a young adult book. However, I don't think it's anything worse than a lot of young adults hear every day anyway. In general, this is a series of unconnected stories, but there is one character that kind of pops up in several stories, and that's Tasha and her friend Judy. And I enjoyed kind of that thread of seeing what they're doing now. However, I didn't necessarily enjoy the characters all that much. I didn't think Tasha was a particularly likeable character in a lot of ways. I understand her character in a lot of ways, but at the same time, being inside her head, I wasn't necessarily completely sympathetic to her. This was quite a quick and easy read. The writing in this one is quite large, so each story didn't take all that long. I seemed to fly through it, and again, that kind of gels with the does or does not feel a little bit more YA in the writing. I think perhaps I would recommend it for younger adults, so I'm reading this in my very late 20s. I think maybe early 20s, very late teens might be a better fit for the storylines in this one, and also that theme of kind of growing up and getting your life together. In a lot of ways, I don't feel like I was a typical teenager, so a lot of kind of what's going on in this and the angst and the didn't really apply to me anyway, I guess. It's not a lot of things that I went through, so I didn't connect on that level either. But again, I think if I was closer to the age bracket that we're kind of talking about here, then maybe it would have resounded a little bit more strongly. All in all, I'm really pleased to have read this one. Still very looking forward to the project that this is part of. And I might talk a little bit more about this as part of that. I haven't quite decided whether I'll be doing videos around that project or not, so I might come back and talk about this a little bit more soon. But in either case, I read this for BookBuddyAthon, and very pleased to have done so. And then the third and final book that I finished was probably finished half an hour after BookBuddyAthon finished for me in Australia, but you know, close enough. And that is The Grave book by Neil Gaiman. This was the buddy read that I was doing with Gabby. It's been interesting discussing this one. I'm not quite sure that Gabby's finished yet, so we haven't had a full kind of end of book discussion. But this one's been sitting on my shelf for a very long time, and I'm very pleased to have finally read it. I very much enjoyed this one, but I didn't love it as much as I expected to. But I have a theory about that. So in the past, I have read Coraline and then American Gods by Neil Gaiman, and I listened to the audio version of Coraline, narrated by Neil Gaiman himself, which was absolutely fantastic, and I think a big part of how much I enjoyed that was Neil Gaiman and his narration of his own work, and I think he just made it. I largely read this one instead of listened to it, and I think that was the difference. I think if I had have listened to this as narrated by Neil Gaiman instead of read it myself, that would have pushed it up to the I love this. As it was, I really, really enjoyed it, but I didn't quite connect to it as strongly as I thought I would. So I said I read this mostly. I did alternate a little bit. When I did my TBR video for this, a commenter mentioned a playlist that I found on YouTube that is readings of Neil Gaiman reading this to a live audience as part of the book tour for it, I think. And so I kind of jumped backwards and forwards between reading a section and listening to Neil Gaiman narrating a section. And I think I did definitely enjoy those parts better. I think his delivery is fantastic. The voices he gives it, the pauses, you know, that comic timing that he does, I think really make the story. And while you can read that in the story, I think he kind of, it brings it to another level. And so I think I would like to revisit this in the future, listening entirely to the audio version and see what I feel about it then. So at the moment I've given it 4 stars, kind of on the lower 4 side, so kind of a 3.5, which doesn't feel quite right. Like I feel like that's not what I should be giving this at all, but it's kind of how I feel. As I said, however, if I listen to the whole thing narrated by Neil Gaiman, I think it could be pushing a 5. I find it really interesting how the audio version can influence your perception of a book. I've definitely upped or down my rating depending on, you know, an audio version that I've read, and not down so much, because up I definitely have given an extra star for the narrator for a book that maybe I didn't connect to all that much, but that narration really pushes it up, and I think that this is one of those times that the narration really makes it, and Neil Gaiman himself narrating it really makes it. That being said, I'm really pleased to have read it largely myself and to experience you know, Neil Gaiman in the written form instead. I listened to both Coraline and American Gods. And yes, I've decided that for me, audiobook is the way to go for Neil Gaiman. So I'm very pleased to have that question answered. So that was the last book I actually finished. I did start another book, and that was A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. I got around 49 pages into this one. This was the April book for the Feminist Orchestra book club. I was meant to read it last month. I picked this one out for the challenge of reading a book with your buddy's favourite colour on, and Gabby's favourite colour is green. So it was great, it was perfect. I was going to use this week to read this one. As I said, I've read about the first 50 pages of this, and I wasn't taking it in. So I think the rush element of trying to read it for a readathon, I wasn't getting the message for this. I'm also considering, I'm going to try and read a bit more, or maybe go back to the start and relaunch this one and see how I go. But I'm also considering getting an audio version of this instead. In the past, I've listened to Virginia Woolf instead of reading her, and that I think went much better. And I see that there is an audio version of this one narrated by Juliet Stevenson, who I really enjoy for classics. So I'm thinking to actually get the message from this instead of just reading it for the sake of reading it. I think I might go with the audio version. So I could have pushed through with this. I could have sat down and read it. But it just felt like reading it for no purpose, because if I wasn't going to take the message in, you know, then I can say, yes, I've read this and I can tick it off, but I'm not actually taking anything from it. And so I kind of went, no, I'm gonna put this aside now. So I'm not quite sure when I'm going to get to this and when I'm going to finish it. You know, I'm launching into another readathon now, and I've got other things I want to read in the month. And as I said, I think I'd like to try the audiobook, but I'm very much caught up in a Harry Potter reread at the moment on audio, and then I've got a big audiobook planned now for June as a buddy read, so I'm not quite sure when I'm going to get the chance to fit this in. I do definitely still want to read this one, but I've kind of missed the boat on the book club anyway, so watch this space. I'm going to get to this, I just don't know quite when. And then the 5th book that I didn't start at all during the readathon is this one, which is The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland, a ship of her own making by Catherine Valente. This one I picked out for the challenge of reading a book with your buddies. First letter of their name in it, so Girl for Gabby. So I'm disappointed I didn't get to this, but I do still want to get to it soon. So these are the 3 books that I was able to complete during the readathon. Let me know how you went down in the comments. What were you able to read during the readathon? Have you read any of these ones, and what did you think of them? As always, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!